Welcome back to episode 4 of The Human Condition. Today, we're doing a deep dive into something quite raw, actually.
Yes, it's a very personal text,
Sure.
a written statement left behind,
Yep.
really offering someone's final thoughts and feelings.
And just to be clear up front, our aim here isn't to, judge or try to diagnose anything from this.
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
It's more about trying to understand the perspective that's being shared in this really difficult document. We want to carefully pull out the core experiences, the emotions being conveyed.
Right. To maybe offer you some insight into this aspect of the human condition, but without, overwhelming speculation.
Exactly. So it's a delicate process.
Okay, so let's maybe start where the writer does. They begin very bluntly, saying they are fucking done.
Yeah, stark.
And then they describe this gradual internal process, like something breaking down inside. It wasn't sudden, apparently.
No, they talk about it starting as a crack, right? Then a split.
And eventually becoming what they call a wide, yawning silence. That phrase really stands out.
It does. What strikes me is that it's framed as a progression, a slow erosion, rather than a single event.
Yeah.
And that yawning silence,
Yeah.
it doesn't sound like just emptiness. It sounds almost active, like it's swallowing things up.
What kind of things?
Well, they mentioned joy, drive, even the ability to picture a future. It was this really profound, pervasive void at their core. It kind of resonates with what we sometimes see as an emotional shutdown when distress becomes just too much to bear.
That's a powerful image. And then they shift focus to this word potential, which seems to carry a huge negative weight for them.
Instead of being encouraging, it sounds like it became a constant reminder of inadequacy.
Exactly, of always falling short. They talk about being stuck in this state of maybe and almost.
Like perpetually on the verge, but never arriving.
Right, and feeling half alive because of it, having to sort of fake being normal.
Yeah, that phrase, smile while sinking, captures it, doesn't it? The effort involved. It makes you think about how societal pressure, even well-intentioned ideas like reaching your potential, can become a massive burden for someone who's already struggling inside.
It really can amplify those feelings of failure, I imagine.
Definitely. And that feeling of being half alive, it highlights the huge disconnect, between the internal reality and the face you have to show the world. How often do we really know what someone else is going through?
Which leads straight into the next point, doesn't it? This bone-deep exhaustion they describe.
Yeah, exhaustion with pretending.
With just being okay. They mentioned being tired of the basics, like being decent, reachable, responsive, the everyday social contract, basically.
And the contrast they draw is so stark. People seeing them as strong,
Yeah.
while internally they feel like a fucking paper bag in a storm.
Mhm.
It's just heartbreaking, that gap.
It really underscores how hidden these internal battles can be. Often the people who project the most strength might be the ones fighting the hardest inside.
And the sheer effort of maintaining that facade, that mask of strength, when you feel so fragile. It's incredibly draining. This weariness, it's just a deep, deep longing, just to be authentic, I think.
But feeling trapped, unable to show it.
Exactly. Unable to shed the mask.
They then give some specific examples of what they see as failures. The one about their sister really hits hard.
The sister needed help, reached out.
And the writer just couldn't respond. They describe feeling numb, full of shame, just paralyzed. And it sounds like it really damaged their relationship.
It speaks volumes, doesn't it?
Yeah.
About how deep internal distress can actually sabotage our connections, even with people we love.
It wasn't a lack of caring, necessarily.
No, it sounds more like a debilitating internal state that just prevented them from being there. And the shame that followed would only deepen that sense of isolation, you'd think.
And there's a similar pattern maybe with the other example. Someone showed them affection.
And it made them uncomfortable. So they ended it preemptively. Ghosted them.
Why? What was the fear there?
It seems like a deep fear of vulnerability. A fear of messing it up, maybe. Or a fear of being truly seen while they felt they were falling apart.
So push people away before they can see the real you, or before you inevitably disappoint them.
Something like that. It's a painful cycle, this kind of preemptive rejection born from self-doubt.
And that fear really comes through when they talk about hearing the question, "You okay?"
Oh, yeah. Their internal reaction is so strong. Fuck. I hated that question. I was never okay. I was never close.
It just lays bare that constant internal struggle they were living with.
And then they move into how they see themselves, and they actively push back against any romantic ideas.
Right. They say, "Don't call me brave or mysterious or poetically wounded."
None of that.
Just exhausted.
Yeah. It's so blunt, so honest. It feels like they're deliberately stripping away any potential for misinterpretation, any way to make their suffering seem palatable, maybe.
Definitely. And that metaphor, they use life as a half-written email that never gets finished.
That's incredibly striking too, isn't it? It speaks to this pervasive feeling of incompleteness, of never reaching any kind of resolution or closure.
Like nothing ever felt finalized.
Exactly, always unfinished. And then that self-description, a walking failed attempt at a person. This
Yeah,
is incredibly painful self-perception.
it really is. And following that, they tackle that common phrase, it gets better.
And flatly reject it, based on their own lived experience, it seems.
Yeah, they say it didn't get better for them. The way they describe waking up each morning, shoved back into a body I didn't ask for.
Facing a fucking calendar full of empty days I don't want to live through.
Hmm. It conveys such a profound lack of hope. Just devastation, really.
It suggests the pain was so constant, so unchanging for them,
Mm.
that hopeful statements like it gets better felt completely hollow, maybe even invalidating, Like
Yeah.
it dismisses the reality of their persistent suffering.
It makes you pause and think about how we offer comfort, doesn't it? Sometimes those platitudes might not land the way we intend.
Absolutely. That visceral image of being forced back into an unwanted life every day. It highlights this terrible disconnect they felt from their own existence.
Then they define what mattering means to them.
Which is interesting. It's about showing up, consistency, offering support, pretty concrete actions.
But then they contrast that immediately with how they see themselves,
As a black hole dressed as a woman. Taking, not giving.
believing that people only saw a curated version, a palatable self, not the real them.
It reveals this deep sense of guilt, doesn't it?
Mm.
And self-condemnation. Feeling like they weren't a positive force, maybe even a negative one.
What's insightful there is they understand what makes a positive connection.
But feel completely unable to be that person. And that gap, that perceived failure, likely just fed back into the feelings of inadequacy, of being a burden.
And the idea of presenting a curated self, it suggests they were very aware of how they might be judged.
Mm-hmm. Afraid of what would happen if people saw the full extent of their internal state. It makes you wonder how many of us feel pressure to do that, to present a more acceptable version of ourselves.
Yeah. So finally, they get to their final reflections, their intent.
There's regret there. For not being stronger, not being enough.
For what they see as wasted time, trying so hard just to function, to find some happiness.
But they're also very clear. This isn't a cry for help.
No, they frame it as a release, a final act to escape what they call prolonged suffering. That metaphor. A mule for my own misery.
It's incredibly powerful. It conveys this sense of just being relentlessly burdened by their own internal state.
And they give clear instructions, don't they, about how this should be seen.
Very clear. No apologies needed, just the truth. Don't romanticize it, don't memorialize it.
It feels like a final attempt to control their own narrative, to define how their experience is understood.
Absolutely. It's a stark, direct conclusion, leaving very little room for sentimentality or misinterpretation. They want the reality acknowledged plainly.
Wow. So this deep dive, it really offers an unfiltered, incredibly stark look into one person's internal world.
It really does. And it forces us, I think, to confront the complexity of suffering, the weight of expectations both from ourselves and others, and the profound isolation someone can feel.
And while this is just one person's unique story, one written expression,
It touches on themes that might resonate more broadly. Human struggles, the search for understanding, for release from inner turmoil. These are universal currents, in a way.
so we really encourage you, listening, to just reflect on the emotions and the experiences that were shared here.
Yeah, and maybe consider the importance of empathy, of open dialogue, as we all try to navigate the complexities of this human condition. Perhaps it prompts us to look a little closer beyond the surface,
To consider the unseen battles that others might be fighting.
or even ones we might be fighting ourselves, sometimes without even fully realizing the weight we carry.